As Westerville, Ohio gets set to host tonight's Democratic presidential debate, we're taking a look at the three candidates leading in the polls. Our battleground tracker finds Senator Elizabeth Warren ahead in early states, followed by Joe Biden and Senator Bernie Sanders. Let's bring in our CBS News 2020 campaign reporters, Bo Erickson, Cara, Korte, and Hudak. Bo covers the Biden campaign, Cara covers Senator Sanders, and Zach covers Senator Warren. So, guys, each of the candidates that you follow has an issue facing their campaign. Bo, I want to start with you. How much energy has the Ukraine controversy taken from the Biden campaign at this point?
Well, hi, Rena. We're outside the university here, right outside the free speech area where people are encouraged or welcome to say whatever they want. So it's been pretty interesting standing out here. But back to that Ukraine issue, the Biden campaign says that this has not taken energy from their campaign. This, since he jumped in the race into April, they have tried to position Mr. Biden's candidacy directly against Trump's presidency. And they say that this is kind of adding to their narrative because, as we all know, 26 days ago, President Trump, it was revealed first in reports, asked a foreign country to help investigate Joe Biden. The campaign and his allies say that this is a sign that President Trump thinks of Joe Biden as his toughest rival. They were sometimes quick to respond and sometimes slow to respond. It was actually almost 2 weeks after the fact that he called for impeachment, and then 23 days after we got that statement from Hunter Biden this weekend saying that if his father wins the presidency, he will not accept any more foreign jobs if Joe Biden enters the White House.
Cara, for Senator Bernie Sanders, I mean, he's got a lot of explaining to do following this heart attack, his medical records and that such. How's the campaign taken to that? How concerned are they about that?
So it's an interesting matter since the senator suffered that heart attack almost 2 weeks ago. There was always a lingering question surrounding his campaign about his age. That's something that you don't hear internally from supporters. From the beginning of the summer, I've spoken to dozens and dozens of Sanders supporters at events. Not a single one has ever said to me that they're worried about his age and his health. But what matters is picking up those voters that are perhaps still undecided. And the question remains is if these voters that are still shopping for their favorite candidate, is this heart attack going to be a setback in their eyes?
And Zach, you're following Senator Warren for the most part. She's been surging in these polls. What do you think is really her biggest battle at this point that she has to overcome?
She looks great right now poll-wise. She has momentum like she hasn't before in this election. For the first time, she's being regarded as a major frontrunner, maybe even the frontrunner. What comes along with that is a target on her back. We've seen over the last couple of weeks, Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar sort of laying the groundwork to take potential big blows at her on Medicare for All on the stage tonight. Buttigieg was running ads that were titled something along the lines of contrasting with Elizabeth Warren's Medicare for All plan. So Medicare for All is the topic, I think, that other campaigns see as her biggest weakness tonight and sort of her lack of clarity on it. But the campaign tells me, that the Warren campaign that is, that they'll be driving home the message they've been saying. All of that in mind, this morning, the plan that the Warren campaign released on campaign finance reform could be seen as putting up the potential for a counterpunch to one of these guys like Pete Buttigieg or Joe Biden, who could attack her on Medicare for All, but at the same time, they've held a lot of big dollar fundraisers, something that she has completely sworn off.
And there's no question the impeachment inquiry is going to come up tonight. It's going to be a topic of conversation. Bo, you've seen Biden take a more forceful approach to impeachment in the past few days. How do you expect him to approach tonight?
It's interesting thinking about how the conversation on impeachment will go tonight because, as my colleagues can attest, we do not hear this a lot from voters out on the trail, but I'm sure it will be asked of them, especially Joe Biden, why he kind of changed tunes, because for the past couple months and for the past couple of decades, for that matter, he has taken a long view on impeachment. Remember, he has been through an impeachment process twice already as a senator, first with President Nixon and then first with President Clinton. And so he wasn't going to take a a driver's seat approach to impeachment. But as we know, after that, he's kind of landed the starring role, you might say, in this House impeachment inquiry. And 19 days after those first reports, he said he supports the House impeachment inquiry. That does not mean if he were a senator today that he would vote to convict. He's not going that far. He's leaving it up to Nancy Pelosi and the other senators, some who are running for president, to make that decision potentially in the future.
And Cara, what's Bernie Sanders' approach going to be when you talk about impeachment?
It's an interesting thing to see him handle for Senator Sanders, who has been pegged by some as being extreme or radical. When it comes to impeachment, he is perhaps one of the most moderate in this field of candidates. Senator Sanders says that he believes President Trump is unfit for office, that the House should move forward with its impeachment inquiry. But something that the senator says that's a bit different from everyone else is he says we must understand here there is a Republican stronghold majority in the Senate. The chances of President Trump being convicted in the Senate of impeachment are low. And Senator Sanders says that if we go through this whole process and President Trump is not kicked out of office, it will show that he's been vindicated. So what is the worth of that? And something else that's interesting to think about is these senators in the field that are running for president, they're going to have to be called back to Washington regularly to have to partake in this impeachment trial. And that's something that perhaps Senator Sanders and some of the other senators, Senator Warren, Klobuchar, Booker, they may think that their time is better spent in Iowa and New Hampshire than it is in a Washington, D.C. hearing room.
Especially as it comes down to the wire, and these weeks are really important. Zach, you know what, has Warren gone far enough to say that she's seen enough evidence to vote to remove the president if impeachment goes to the Senate at this point? How do you expect her to handle this issue?
Warren has been calling for impeachment since the Mueller report, and she talks about it regularly on the trail. Now she's saying that the focus should be on Ukraine, but this has been a part of her identity sort of the entire time she's been running here. As she's dealt with sort of early on questions of electability, she's framed herself as a fighter, and part of that has been, since the beginning, saying, let's get Trump out of here. And when she's been hit with questions like, will that maybe not be so good politically for Democrats, she says that she and other politicians have a responsibility to the Constitution, not to, political safety here, and they are obligated to move forward with impeachment.
Now, you all spend a lot of time covering this candidates. What do you see as their biggest asset at this point moving forward that can really help catapult them? Cara, I want to start with you.
Yeah, I think two interesting things to maybe look at moving forward with Senator Sanders. As much as this recent heart attack, may be a setback for him, perhaps the bar has been lowered for Senator Sanders. If he comes out tonight, the first time we're really seeing him back on the trail since that heart attack in Las Vegas, if he knocks it out of the park today, people might be wowed. Voters at home might be wowed that he looks well, he sounds well, and his energy is up. So perhaps this, health hurdle is something that may end up helping him in the long run. That remains to be seen. Moving forward, the senator is coming back to the campaign trail this Saturday with a Bernie's Back rally in Queens, his neighboring borough of his native Brooklyn in New York. The campaign has promised there will be a special guest there, and while no one has told me, I cannot report that it'll be Cardi B, I can tell you, Rena, I have checked Cardi B's tour schedule, and she is nowhere across the country or the world this weekend. So keep your eye out for Saturday. I know I'll be there trying to see who this special guest is, who can get the party going again for Senator Sanders on Saturday.
Sounds like a fun perk, Cara, as part of the job here. I really enjoy that. Zach, so what might separate Warren as the campaign continues at this point?
She obviously has this momentum at this moment, but I think what we're really seeing is the early state organization that her campaign invested in early on. 6 months ago, everybody was talking about her burn rate, and if you asked the campaign, they would have said, there's so many candidates, we need to hire early. And they hired lots of people early, fast. And I think we've seen in these events now, she had 30 minutes from Reno in a city 1/5 the size of Reno, twice the audience of Joe Biden on the same night a couple weeks back. She's bringing more people regularly to her events than anybody else. And after the events, she has, 8,000-10,000 people will wait for hours to take a picture with her. So I think what she's moving into for the first time here is a little bit of a celebrity status, like something that Joe Biden has enjoyed, but now she's starting to get that little bit of wow factor, and I think that is something that she could really try to push forward as she moves on here.
But what about Biden's plans moving forward?
Yeah, there's some criticism of Mr. Biden's campaign from some of his rivals that his supporters are not as excited as maybe a Warren selfie line, those people in her famous selfie line. But that's just not something that I see here. Another thing is a criticism that he has is that his supporters are a little older. But I actually think that may be a benefit to him because as the campaign advisors have told us many times, older voters, they show up on caucus day and on primary day, and they will support him through and through. The last thing, one person on the campaign described to me that this may be the most pragmatic election we've had in decades. And that is an encouraging sign to them, and they point to that electability argument. As Joe Biden continues to face President Trump in the media, especially with this Ukraine corruption claims that he says is not true, he says that will add to that narrative that he is the one to take on Donald Trump in the general election and beat him.
Bo Erickson, Cara, Korte, and Hudak, I want to thank all three of you for joining us.
Thank you, Rena.